For 18 months, the Korean billionaire never opened his eyes. Doctors said he was gone. Machines kept his body alive. His sister visited twice a week, smiled for the nurses, and quietly prepared to inherit everything. Then one night, a black cleaner found a letter hidden under his pillow. The letter said the car crash wasn't an accident. It said the woman pretending to mourn him wanted him dead. The cleaner read the letter out loud, and the man in the coma opened his eyes. Before the story continues, take a second to subscribe if you love emotional stories with twists like this, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Seraphine's cloth paused halfway across the nightstand when her eyes caught the corner of paper peeking from beneath the silk pillow. 18 months she'd been cleaning this room in the Hudson family estate in Richmond, Virginia, and 18 months Kwon Jae-hyun had been lying motionless in that bed, breathing through tubes while machines beeped their mechanical rhythm. She wasn't supposed to touch personal things, but something pulled at her. The letter was yellowed at the edges, written in shaky handwriting that looked like it came from someone who didn't have much time. Seraphine, a 32-year-old woman from Uganda who'd come to America 5 years ago with nothing but hope, carefully unfolded it. My dearest son, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. The accident that put you here wasn't an accident. Victoria knows what happened that night on the bridge. She knows everything. Trust the one who finds this letter. Trust no one else. The combination to the safe is your mother's birthday backwards. Inside, you'll find the truth about why they need you to never wake up. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. Appa. Seraphine's heart hammered. She looked at Jae-hyun's face, peaceful despite the breathing tube, his black hair falling across his forehead. 35 years old according to his chart, and he'd been running one of the most successful Korean import businesses on the East Coast before the so-called car accident. "Mr. Kwon," she whispered, more to herself than to him. His finger twitched. Seraphine nearly dropped the letter. She'd cleaned around him for a year and a half, watched nurses tend to him, seen his sister Victoria visit twice a week with her perfect makeup and her cold eyes, and never had she seen him move. "Mr. Kwon, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. Once, twice. Then they opened, dark brown eyes unfocused and confused, trying to make sense of the ceiling, the machines, the strange African woman standing beside his bed holding a letter. "Don't try to talk," Seraphine said quickly, her Ugandan accent thickening with nervousness. "You have breathing tube. You've been in coma for 18 months. Jae-hyun's eyes widened. He tried to sit up, but his muscles had atrophied. Panic flooded his face. "Please, please stay calm." Seraphine pressed the nurse call button repeatedly. "I'm getting help. But Mr. Kwon, before they come, your father left you letter. He said the accident wasn't accident. He said Victoria knows." Recognition flashed in his eyes. Pain, anger, betrayal. The door burst open and nurses flooded in, followed by Dr. Morrison, whose jaw literally dropped when he saw Jae-hyun's open eyes. "That's impossible," Dr. Morrison breathed. "We've seen no brain activity suggesting consciousness for months." Seraphine backed away as the medical team swarmed, but she kept the letter clutched in her hand, hidden in her cleaning apron. Something told her not to give it to anyone. Not yet. As they worked to remove the breathing tube, Jae-hyun's eyes found hers across the chaos. A silent understanding passed between them. Trust no one else. 3 days later, Seraphine was mopping the hallway when Victoria Hudson Kwon swept past in her designer heels, her pat phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what the doctors say, Marcus. 18 months and he suddenly wakes up? Right when we're about to finalize the business transfer? It's too convenient." Seraphine kept her head down, invisible as always. Rich people never really saw the help. "Well, make sure the lawyers know he's not mentally competent yet," Victoria continued. "We need at least another 6 months before—" "Yes, I know. The Seoul branch won't wait forever, but they don't have a choice if we're the only ones with access to the accounts." She disappeared into Jae-hyun's room, and Seraphine's grip tightened on her mop handle. So it was true. Whatever had happened to him, his own sister was involved. That night after her shift, Seraphine sat in her tiny studio apartment in Richmond's Church Hill neighborhood, staring at the letter. She should give it to the police, but what would they do? Investigate a year-and-a-half-old accident? Believe a cleaner over a wealthy socialite? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This is Jae-hyun. Nurse, help me get phone. Need to talk. They can't know. Coffee shop on Carey Street tomorrow, 3 p.m. Please." Seraphine's pulse quickened. This was crazy. She should stay out of it. She was just a cleaner, not some detective, and definitely not someone who should be getting involved with a Korean mafia boss, because that's what the whispered rumors around the estate said he really was. Import business was just the front. But she remembered his father's words. "Trust the one who finds this letter." "I'll be there," she texted back. The coffee shop was one of those hipster places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Seraphine arrived 10 minutes early, wearing her best jeans and a simple blue blouse, feeling out of place among the college students typing on laptops. Jae-hyun arrived exactly at 3, moving slowly with a cane, his frame thin from 18 months of muscle loss. He wore simple black clothes that still somehow looked expensive, and his hair was neatly combed back. Even weakened, he carried himself with quiet authority. He slid into the booth across from her, wincing slightly. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, his English touched with a Korean accent but perfectly clear. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Seraphine admitted. "This is all very insane?" He offered a slight smile. "Yeah, welcome to my life." A waitress came by and they ordered random drinks neither of them really wanted. When she left, Jae-hyun leaned forward. "Do you still have the letter?" Seraphine pulled it from her purse, sliding it across the table. He read it slowly, his jaw tightening with each word. "My father died 6 months before my accident," he said quietly. "Heart attack, they said, but he was only 62 and healthy. Now I'm wondering—" "I'm so sorry," Seraphine murmured. "The combination he mentioned, my mother's birthday backwards. I tried it 2 days ago when the nurses weren't looking. There's a wall safe in my room, hidden behind a painting. Inside was a USB drive and documents, evidence that my sister and her husband have been embezzling from the business for 3 years. Millions of dollars funneled through fake accounts to their private offshore holdings." "That's why they needed you unconscious," Seraphine realized. "As long as you couldn't sign anything or make decisions." "They had power of attorney. They've been selling off assets, making deals with competitors, probably planning to drain everything and disappear." His hands clenched into fists. "But the question is, how did they put me in that coma? The accident was real. I remember driving, remember the other car hitting me, the bridge railing, the water." "Maybe they caused the accident but didn't expect you to survive it," Seraphine suggested quietly. "When you did, just in a coma, it worked even better for them." Jae-hyun studied her for a long moment. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, I'm exactly what people say I am." "Are you?" she asked directly. "My family's business is complicated," he said carefully. "We import goods from Korea, yes. Some of those goods exist in gray areas. But I never hurt innocent people. I never dealt drugs or weapons, and I didn't deserve what my sister did." Seraphine believed him. Maybe she was foolish, but something in his eyes was genuine. "Your father said to trust the one who finds the letter," she said simply. "I found it, so maybe I'm supposed to help you figure this out." "It could be dangerous," Jae-hyun warned. "If Victoria realizes you know something—" "I'm just a cleaner." Seraphine shrugged. "Nobody sees me, nobody thinks I matter. That's my advantage." For the first time, real warmth entered his expression. "Thank you, Seraphine. Truly." The way he said her name, careful and respectful, made her heart do something strange. Over the next 2 weeks, they met 4 more times, always in different places. A park in Bryan Park, a library in the museum district, a quiet restaurant in Shako Bottom. Jae-hyun was regaining strength daily, and Seraphine was gathering information. She'd started paying attention to Victoria's phone calls, her visitor logs, the papers she sometimes left in Jae-hyun's room thinking he couldn't understand them. Piece by piece, they assembled the full picture. Victoria and her husband Marcus had been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. When their father died, they'd seen their chance. Marcus had hired someone to run Jae-hyun's car off the road that night, making it look like an accident. They just hadn't expected him to survive. But his coma had been even more convenient. "There's one thing I don't understand," Seraphine said one afternoon as they sat on a bench in Maymont Park, watching ducks glide across the pond. "Why not just finish it while you were unconscious?" Jae-hyun's expression darkened. "Too obvious. I had too many. People loyal to me. If I died mysteriously after already being in an accident, there would have been investigations, questions. This way they could let nature take its course, and if I never woke up, they'd pull the plug eventually and play the grieving family." "That's horrible." "That's family," he said bitterly, then glanced at her. "Sorry, I shouldn't be so cynical." "No, I understand," Seraphine said softly. "My family back in Uganda, when I told them I wanted to come to America, they said I was abandoning them. They said I thought I was too good for home, but I just wanted a chance at something more, you know? I send money back when I can, but they still won't talk to me." Jae-hyun reached over and gently squeezed her hand. Their loss. The touch was brief but warm, and Seraphine felt heat climb her cheeks. "So what's the plan?" she asked, trying to focus. "You have evidence. Why not go to the police?" "Because I need more than evidence of embezzlement," Jae-hyun explained. "I need proof of the attempted murder. Otherwise, Victoria can claim I'm mentally unstable from the coma, that I'm paranoid and confused. She'll fight me in court for years, and the business will collapse in the meantime." "Then what?" He smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "Then I make her confess." The trap was set for 3 weeks later, during the business gala Victoria had organized to celebrate Jae-hyun's recovery. Seraphine watched from the catering staff. Victoria had never noticed she was the same cleaner from the estate, and in a server's uniform, she blended perfectly. The Richmond Convention Center glittered with chandeliers and expensive champagne. Business partners from Korea had flown in, along with local politicians and society figures. Victoria held court in a stunning red dress, playing the devoted sister, while her husband Marcus networked aggressively. Jae-hyun arrived fashionably late, leaning on his cane but looking stronger than he had in weeks. He'd regained some weight, and in his tailored suit he looked every inch the powerful executive. Victoria's smile faltered when she saw him, just for a second. "Jae-hyun," she gushed, kissing his cheek. "You look wonderful. I was worried you might not be up to this." "I wouldn't miss it," he said smoothly. "After all, you worked so hard to keep things running while I was indisposed." Something flickered in her eyes. Suspicion? Fear? Seraphine moved through the crowd with a tray of drinks, her heart pounding. The microphone wire taped to Jae-hyun's chest was recording everything, feeding to a device in her pocket. They just needed Victoria to slip up, to say something incriminating. But the night dragged on, and Victoria remained perfectly poised, perfectly innocent. Then, just before midnight, Marcus pulled Victoria aside, near where Seraphine was refilling champagne glasses. "He knows something," Marcus hissed quietly. "The way he's looking at us, he can't know anything," Victoria snapped. "He was unconscious. There's no way." "Unless someone told him. That nurse, maybe, or—" "We paid off everyone who mattered," Victoria said coldly. "And even if he suspects, what can he prove? The accident investigation closed months ago. The embezzlement is hidden behind layers of shell companies. He has nothing." Seraphine's hand trembled slightly as she set down a glass. "We stick to the plan," Victoria continued. "In 6 months, we move the remaining assets offshore and let the business collapse. Blame it on his mismanagement before the accident. By the time anyone untangles the mess, we'll be in Singapore living like royalty." Marcus nodded slowly. "And if he pushes?" Victoria's expression went ice cold. "Then we finish what we started. Accidents happen every day, Marcus. His recovery was miraculous, but trauma patients often relapse. Seraphine's blood ran cold. That night in the parking garage, she found Jae-hyun leaning against his car, his face pale. "Did you get it?" he asked. She pulled out the recording device. "Every word." He closed his eyes in relief. "Then it's over." "Not yet," Seraphine said urgently. "She threatened you. At the end, she said if you push, they'll finish what they started. You can't go back to that estate, Jae-hyun. It's not safe." "I have security." "They had security before, and look what happened," she argued. "Please, just stay somewhere else tonight, maybe, until we can figure out the next move?" He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "There's a hotel in Insdale. I'll check in there. But Seraphine, you need to be careful too. If they realize you're involved—" "I'm nobody," she reminded him. "Remember?" But the worry in his eyes suggested he no longer saw her that way. The next morning, Seraphine woke to 17 missed calls, all from the estate. Her stomach dropped as she listened to the voicemails. Jae-hyun had collapsed during the night, was back in the hospital. The doctors were saying possible stroke brought on by the stress of the gala. She drove to the hospital, breaking probably 6 traffic laws, her mind racing. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed. Victoria must have someone on the inside, must have found a way to... But when she burst into his room, Jae-hyun was sitting up in bed, perfectly fine, talking quietly to a police detective. "Seraphine," he said with relief. "Good. Detective Park, this is the woman I told you about." The detective, a sharp-eyed Korean-American man in his 40s, studied her carefully. "Ms. Nasarumbi, Mr. Kwon has been telling me quite a story. I'm going to need to hear your version." Seraphine spent 2 hours going through everything with Detective Park. The letter, the meetings, the recordings from the gala. She half expected him to dismiss it all, to say there wasn't enough evidence or that she'd misunderstood what she'd heard. Instead, he'd leaned back in his chair and said, "We've been watching the Hudson family for 6 months. Different case, different suspicions. But this connects some dots we've been trying to connect." "You knew they were criminals?" Seraphine asked, shocked. "We knew Marcus Hudson had connections to some questionable real estate deals and possible money laundering," Detective Park explained. "But we didn't have solid evidence. What you've brought us, combined with what we already have, we might actually be able to build a case." Jae-hyun, who'd been quiet during her testimony, finally spoke. "The collapse last night was staged. My idea. I wanted Victoria to think she'd succeeded, to make her feel safe enough to start moving money. If we can catch her in the act of transferring funds—" "We already have teams watching their accounts," Detective Park confirmed. "The moment they make a move, we'll know." Seraphine felt dizzy. "So what now?" "Now we wait," Jae-hyun said, "and I stay critically ill for a few more days while the police do their work." It was harder than it sounded. Seraphine had to go back to work at the estate, had to act normal while Victoria walked around with barely concealed satisfaction, making plans for Jae-hyun's memorial service, for God's sake, while he was still alive. "Such a tragedy," Victoria said to her interior designer 3 days later, while Seraphine dusted nearby. "First the accident, then just as he was recovering. The human body can only take so much trauma, I suppose." Seraphine bit her tongue so hard she tasted blood. But on the 4th day, Detective Park called. They'd traced a major transfer, $5 million moved through 3 shell companies and ending up in a Cayman Islands account under a false name. They had enough to make arrests. Jae-hyun, who'd been discharged quietly from the hospital to a safe house, made one last call to his sister. Seraphine was there when he did it, sitting in the small apartment the police had set up, watching him dial with steady hands. "Victoria," he said when she answered, his voice weak and raspy. "It's me." "Jae-hyun!" Victoria's false concern dripped through the speaker. "How are you feeling? The doctors said you had another episode." "I'm dying," he said flatly. "The doctors give me maybe a week. I wanted to call to tell you. I forgive you." Silence on the other end. "Forgive me." Victoria's voice had gone cautious. For what? For everything, Jae-hyun said softly. I know what you did, Victoria. The accident, the embezzlement, all of it. I've known since I woke up. More silence, and Seraphine could practically hear Victoria's mind racing. I don't know what you're talking about, Victoria said finally. You're confused. The coma damaged. I have proof, Jae-hyun interrupted. Documents, recordings, everything. But I don't care anymore. I'm dying anyway. What's the point of revenge? I just wanted you to know that I understand why you did it. Father always loved me more, gave me more responsibility. You felt overlooked, undervalued. I get it. Jae-hyun. Victoria's voice cracked slightly, and for a moment she almost sounded human. Just promise me one thing, he continued. When I'm gone, don't let the business die with me. It was Father's legacy, even if you have to sell it. Make sure it goes to someone who'll respect what he built. Of course, Victoria said. Jae-hyun, I never wanted it to be this way. You have to believe that. The accident, it got out of hand. Marcus said it would just be a scare, something to make you back off the investigation you were doing into the accounts. Seraphine's eyes widened. She was confessing. You were getting too close, Victoria continued, her words tumbling out now. We'd been so careful for so long, but you started noticing discrepancies, asking questions. Marcus panicked. He said if we could just sideline you for a while, give us time to cover our tracks. But then you ended up in a coma, and it seemed like maybe it was meant to be, you know? Like the universe was telling us this was our chance. To steal everything, Jae-hyun said quietly. To take what should have been ours from the beginning, Victoria corrected. Father left you everything, Jae-hyun. The business, the estate, the respect of the community. What did I get? A trust fund and a pat on the head. So yes, when the opportunity came, I took it. And I'm not sorry. Detective Park, listening through headphones in the corner, gave a thumbs up. They had what they needed. I understand, Jae-hyun said, and he almost sounded sad. Goodbye, Victoria. He hung up before she could respond. They arrested Victoria and Marcus that evening at a charity function, handcuffs glinting under the ballroom lights. The scandal exploded across Richmond's social scene like a bomb. Korean Mafia boss nearly murdered by his own sister. Millions embezzled. Coma victim rises to expose corruption. The media couldn't get enough. Seraphine watched it all from a distance, relieved it was over but feeling strangely hollow. Her role in the investigation had been kept quiet at Jae-hyun's insistence. To protect her, he'd said. So the world didn't know about the cleaner who'd found the letter, who'd helped bring down a conspiracy. She went back to work, back to her quiet life, expecting everything to return to normal. Instead, a week after the arrests, Jae-hyun showed up at her apartment with takeout from a Ugandan restaurant in Richmond's West End. How did you even know I live here? Seraphine asked, shocked to find him at her door. I'm recovering from a coma, not losing my detective skills, he said with a slight smile. Can I come in? Her apartment was tiny, barely more than a room with a kitchenette, nothing like the estate he was used to. But he settled onto her second-hand couch like it was perfectly normal, unpacking containers of matoke and groundnut soup. You didn't have to do this, Seraphine said, though her mouth watered at the smell of home cooking. I wanted to thank you properly, Jae-hyun said. Everything you did, the risks you took. I owe you my life, Seraphine. Literally. I just found a letter, she protested. You found the letter, he corrected. And then you believed a stranger, helped him investigate his own family, gathered evidence, risked your job and possibly your safety. That's not nothing. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Seraphine was surprised by how natural it felt, having him here in her small space. What happens now? She asked eventually. With the business, with everything? The business is a mess, Jae-hyun admitted. Victoria and Marcus did more damage than I initially thought. It'll take months, maybe years to untangle. I'm considering selling parts of it, restructuring others, but I'll figure it out. And your family? Do you have anyone else? His expression shadowed. My mother died when I was young. Father's gone. Victoria was all I had left, and he shrugged. I have cousins in Korea, but we're not close. It's mostly just me now. Seraphine understood that loneliness. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said quietly. I'm learning that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you need them most. He looked at her meaningfully. Heat climbed her cheeks again, that strange flutter in her chest returning. I should probably go, Jae-hyun said, standing. I just wanted to see you, to make sure you were okay after everything. I'm fine, Seraphine assured him, walking him to the door. He paused in the doorway, turning back. Would you have dinner with me? Properly, I mean. Not takeout in your apartment or coffee shop planning sessions, an actual dinner, where we talk about things that aren't conspiracies and attempted murder. Seraphine's heart skipped. Like a date? If you want it to be, he said carefully. Or just as friends, if you prefer. No pressure, I'd like to get to know you better, Seraphine, the real you, not just the brave woman who saved my life. She should probably say no. He was her former employer, technically, and there were complications, and they came from completely different worlds. Yes, she heard herself say, I'd like that. His smile was genuine and warm, and made her feel like maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this darkness. Their first real date was at a small Ethiopian restaurant in Richmond's North Side. Jae-hyun had asked where she wanted to go, and she'd chosen there because it reminded her of home. Spicy food, communal eating, flavors that brought back memories of family dinners before everything got complicated. This is amazing, Jae-hyun said, trying the Doro Wat with injera. I've never had Ethiopian food before. It's similar to some Ugandan dishes, Seraphine explained. Different spices, but the same idea of sharing from one plate, eating with your hands. It's supposed to bring people closer. I like that philosophy, he said softly. They talked for hours. He told her about growing up Korean American in Virginia, about the pressure to honor his heritage while fitting into American culture, about his father's expectations and his mother's gentle wisdom before she passed. She told him about Uganda, about her family's farm outside Kampala, about the brother she missed desperately and the sister who'd stopped writing years ago. Do you regret coming here? Jae-hyun asked. Seraphine considered it. Sometimes I regret how it happened. The fights, the harsh words. But I don't regret the choice. There's more opportunity here, more freedom. I can become something different than what was planned for me. I understand that, he said. My father wanted me to take over the business exactly as he'd run it. No changes, no innovation, just preserve his legacy. But I wanted to modernize, to make it legitimate, to step out of the gray areas. We fought about it constantly. Did you get to make those changes? I was starting to, Jae-hyun said. Before the accident. Now I can finish what I started. As they walked back to her apartment later, Jae-hyun took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. His hand was warm and strong, fingers laced through hers like they belonged there. Thank you for tonight, he said when they reached her building. I haven't felt this normal I can't remember how long. Thank you for asking me, Seraphine replied. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Can I see you again? I'd be disappointed if you didn't, she admitted. His smile was bright enough to light the dark street. Over the next 3 months, they fell into a pattern. Jae-hyun was busy restructuring his business, meeting with lawyers and accountants and investors. Seraphine continued cleaning houses, though she'd quit working at the estate. Too many bad memories there, but evenings were theirs. Sometimes they went out, trying new restaurants or walking through Richmond's parks. Sometimes they stayed in, cooking together in her tiny kitchen or his much larger one at his penthouse downtown. He taught her to make kimchi jjigae, and she taught him to make proper chapati. They kept it quiet at first, not announcing anything publicly. The media was still circling the story of Victoria's trial, and neither of them wanted to add fuel to that fire. But slowly, carefully, they were building something real. My lawyer thinks Victoria will take a plea deal. Jae-hyun told her one night as they sat on his balcony, looking out over the James River. 10 years for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit murder. Marcus might get 15 because he was the one who actually arranged the accident. "How do you feel about that?" Seraphine asked. He was quiet for a long time. "She's my sister. Part of me still remembers when we were kids, when she wasn't this person who tried to kill me for money. But mostly I just feel sad, I guess, that she chose this. That our father's legacy drove her to such darkness." Seraphine rested her head on his shoulder. "You can grieve who she was and still accept who she became." "When did you get so wise?" he asked softly. "I've always been wise," she teased. "You just noticed because I saved your life." He laughed, pulling her closer. Fair point. A few weeks later, Seraphine got a call from her sister in Uganda. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, and hearing Nabiria's voice made her throat tight. "Sarah," Nabiria said, her voice thick with tears. "It's Mother. She's sick, very sick. The doctors say maybe a few months, probably less. She's asking for you." Seraphine closed her eyes. "I don't have money for a ticket right now." "I know things have been hard between us," Nabiria interrupted. "The things we said when you left. I'm sorry, Sarah. Mother is sorry too. Please come home." When Jae-hyun found her crying in her apartment that evening, he didn't ask questions, just held her until she could speak. "I have to go to Uganda," she said finally. "My mother is dying." "Of course you do," he said immediately. "When?" "I don't know. I need to save up for the ticket, maybe in a few weeks." "Seraphine," he interrupted gently, "let me buy your ticket, please." "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering," he said firmly. "You saved my life. The least I can do is help you get home to say goodbye to your mother." She wanted to argue, to insist on her independence, but the relief was too overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered. He kissed her forehead softly. "When do you want to leave?" "As soon as possible." He pulled out his phone. "I'll book you a flight for tomorrow night." Uganda was exactly how she remembered, and completely different at the same time. The red dust roads, the tropical heat, the sounds of market vendors and boda-boda motorcycles. It all felt like stepping into a memory. Her family's farm looked smaller than she remembered. The house needed paint, and some of the crops looked neglected. But when her mother came to the door, thin and frail but alive, Seraphine forgot everything else. "Mama," she breathed, and then she was being pulled into familiar arms, breathing in the scent of cooking smoke and shea butter that meant home. They cried together on the porch, while Nabiria watched with wet eyes. "I'm sorry," her mother said in Luganda, "for the things I said when you left, for not understanding. You were right to go, baby girl. You were always meant for bigger things than this small farm." "I missed you so much," Seraphine sobbed. The next 2 weeks were a gift. Her mother's illness was serious, aggressive cancer that the local clinic couldn't treat, but she was stable enough to spend time with family. They cooked together, told stories, worked in the garden. Seraphine's brother came with his wife and children, and even her father, usually so stern, softened enough to tell her he was proud. Jae-hyun called every day, sometimes just to check in, sometimes to tell her about his day, always to remind her he was there if she needed anything. "You sound happy," he observed one evening. "I am," Seraphine admitted. "Sad but happy. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," he said gently. "Treasure this time, Seraphine. These moments matter." On her last night before flying back to America, her mother pulled her aside. "This man who calls you every day," she said with knowing eyes. "Tell me about him." Seraphine blushed. "He's complicated." "The good ones usually are," her mother said. "Do you love him?" She hadn't let herself think about it in those terms, had been too cautious, too afraid. But sitting there in the Ugandan night, watching fireflies dance over the banana plants, she realized the truth. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I do." "Then don't waste time being afraid," her mother advised. "Life is too short and love is too rare. If you found someone who makes your heart feel full, hold onto that. What if it doesn't work out? We're from such different worlds." So were your father and I, her mother laughed. He was from the city. I was a village girl. Everyone said it wouldn't last, but here we are, 35 years later. Love doesn't care about differences, Sarah. It only cares about whether you're brave enough to fight for it. Seraphine hugged her mother tight, memorizing the feel of her arms, the sound of her voice. Thank you, Mama. Go back to America, her mother said. Live your life with no regrets, and bring him to meet me before... She didn't finish, but they both knew. I will, Seraphine promised. The first thing Seraphine saw when she got off the plane at Richmond International was Jae-hyun waiting at arrivals with flowers. Sunflowers, bright and cheerful and completely unexpected. You didn't have to pick me up, she said, though happiness bloomed warm in her chest. I wanted to, he said simply, pulling her into a hug that felt like coming home. They drove through Richmond in comfortable silence, Seraphine watching familiar streets roll by and feeling the strangeness of being caught between two worlds. Part of her was still in Uganda, sitting with her mother under the stars. Part of her was here, next to this man who'd somehow become essential. How is she? Jae-hyun asked eventually. Weak but fighting, Seraphine said. The doctors there don't give her long, but she's strong. She always has been. You get that from her, he observed. Seraphine smiled slightly. She asked about you. Told me not to waste time being afraid of what could go wrong. Jae-hyun glanced at her. Smart woman. She wants to meet you, Seraphine continued quietly. Before, you know. He reached over and took her hand. Then we'll go, whenever you're ready. Just like that. Just like that, he confirmed. Seraphine, I don't know exactly what this is between us, but I know I don't want to waste it. If meeting your mother is important to you, then it's important to me. She squeezed his hand, overwhelmed by the simple certainty in his voice. That night, over dinner at his penthouse, she told him about the farm, about her father's quiet pride and her brother's boisterous children, about Nabiria's apologies and reconciliation. He listened with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at the funny stories, looking sad at the hard ones. I'm glad you got to go back, he said finally. Family is complicated, but it's still family. Speaking of family, Seraphine said carefully, have you heard from Victoria? His expression clouded. She wrote me a letter from jail. Wanted to explain, to apologize, something. I haven't opened it yet. Will you? Eventually, probably, he sighed. Right now, I'm still too angry. She tried to kill me, Seraphine. For money. How do you forgive that? I don't know if you do, Seraphine said honestly, but maybe someday you find a way to make peace with it. He looked at her for a long moment. How are you so wise and so young? I'm 32, not exactly young, she laughed. Younger than me, he pointed out, by 3 years. Hardly scandalous. He smiled, but it faded quickly. There's something I need to tell you about the business. Seraphine's stomach tightened. What about it? The restructuring is taking longer than expected. The Seoul branch wants to cut ties completely, and several of our American partners are nervous about the scandal. I'm probably going to have to go to Korea for a few months, maybe longer, to salvage what I can. Oh, Seraphine said quietly. I don't want to go, Jae-hyun said quickly. Or rather, I don't want to go without you. But I can't ask you to uproot your life, especially now with your mother. When would you leave? 2 months, probably, after Victoria's sentencing hearing. 2 months felt like both forever and no time at all. We'll figure it out, Seraphine said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. People do long-distance relationships all the time. Is that what we're doing? Jae-hyun asked softly. A relationship? She met his eyes. I'd like it to be. He reached across the table and took her hand, bringing it to his lips. So would I. Victoria's sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday in early November. Jae-hyun asked if Seraphine would come with him, and she'd agreed without hesitation. The courtroom was packed with media and curious onlookers. Victoria looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, her perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her makeup-free face showing every one of her 38 years. When her eyes met Jae-hyun's across the room, something painful flashed across her expression. Regret? Shame? Seraphine couldn't tell. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. 18 counts of embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, money laundering. The list went on. Marcus, who'd taken a plea deal and testified against Victoria, got 12 years. The prosecutor was asking for 20 for Victoria, given her role as the mastermind. When it was time for victim impact statements, Jae-hyun stood. Seraphine watched him walk to the front, his posture straight despite the cane he still needed sometimes. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady. "Victoria is my sister. We grew up together, played together, fought together. When our mother died, she held my hand at the funeral. When our father put too much pressure on me, she made me laugh. For most of my life, she was my best friend." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "And then she tried to kill me," Jae-hyun continued, his voice hardening. "Not in a moment of passion, not in self-defense. She planned it. She paid someone to run me off the road, and when I survived, she watched me lie in a coma for 18 months, waiting for me to die so she could steal everything our father built." The courtroom was silent. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive her," Jae-hyun said quietly. "Right now, I'm just trying to understand how the person I trusted most became someone capable of such betrayal. But I do know this. She needs to face consequences for what she did, not just for my sake, but for her own. Maybe in prison she'll find whatever piece of humanity she lost along the way." He sat down, and Seraphine reached for his hand. It was shaking. The judge sentenced Victoria to 18 years with possibility of parole after 12. As they led her away, Victoria looked back one last time. "I'm sorry, Jae," she called out, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Jae-hyun didn't respond. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Jae-hyun ignored them, pulling Seraphine toward his car with single-minded focus. "Are you okay?" she asked, once they were safely inside. "No," he admitted, "but I will be." They drove to Maymont Park, their spot, and walked along the paths in silence. November had painted the trees in reds and golds, and the air was crisp with approaching winter. "Do you think she meant it?" Seraphine asked eventually. "The apology?" "Probably," Jae-hyun said, "but that doesn't change what she did. Sorry doesn't give me back 18 months of my life. It doesn't undo the nightmares I have about drowning in that river. It doesn't repair the trust she destroyed." "No, it doesn't," Seraphine agreed softly. "But maybe someday it could be a starting point." He looked at her. "You're more forgiving than I am." "I'm practical," she corrected. "Holding on to anger only hurts you, not her. When you're ready, letting go might set you free." Jae-hyun pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "I found you," she reminded him. "Or rather, I found a letter that led me to you." "Best letter ever written," he murmured, and then he kissed her. It was soft and sweet, nothing rushed or demanding, just the gentle press of lips that promised more. When they pulled back, both were smiling. "I'm falling in love with you," Jae-hyun said quietly. "Just so you know." Seraphine's heart soared. "Good, because I'm falling in love with you, too." The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of happiness and growing anxiety. Jae-hyun's trip to Korea was confirmed for early January, and Seraphine tried not to think about how much she'd miss him. They spent every moment they could together. He took her to a Korean cultural festival in D.C., teaching her traditional dances and feeding her tteokbokki until she couldn't eat anymore. She brought him to a Ugandan community gathering in Richmond, where he charmed everyone with his willingness to try every food offered and his terrible but enthusiastic attempts at learning Luganda phrases. "Your friends are wonderful," he said on the drive home. "They welcomed me like family." "They are family," Seraphine said, "not by blood, but by choice. That's what you build when you're far from home." For Christmas, Jae-hyun bought her a plane ticket to Uganda. It's open-ended, he explained, so you can stay as long as you need to. Your mother shouldn't have to wait to see you again. Seraphine cried, overwhelmed by the generosity and the thoughtfulness. This is too much. It's not enough, he interrupted gently. I'd give you the world if I could, Seraphine. She kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and love into it. For his gift, she'd spent weeks working on something special. A scrapbook filled with photos from their time together, ticket stubs from their dates, dried flowers from bouquets he'd brought her, handwritten notes about favorite memories. On the last page, she'd written, "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for trusting me when you had no reason to. Thank you for showing me what love looks like when it's real." Jae-hyun read it slowly, his expression growing more emotional with each page. When he finished, he pulled her into his arms and held her, tight. "I'm going to miss you so much," he whispered into her hair. "It's only a few months," Seraphine said, trying to convince herself as much as him. "Too long," he murmured. They spent New Year's Eve on his balcony, watching fireworks explode over the James River. As midnight struck, Jae-hyun took both her hands. "I know this is fast," he said. "We've only known each other for 7 months, but those 7 months have been the most real thing I've experienced in years. You make me want to be better, to build something meaningful, to believe in tomorrow." "Jae-hyun," Seraphine's voice caught. "I'm not asking for promises or commitments you're not ready for," he continued quickly. "I just want you to know that when I come back from Korea, I'm coming back for you, for us, whatever that looks like." Seraphine kissed him, tasting champagne and hope. "I'll be waiting." Jae-hyun left for Seoul on January 7th. Seraphine went to Uganda 2 days later. The timing was deliberate, both of them needing distance to figure out their separate situations before they could figure out their shared future. Uganda was harder this time. Her mother had deteriorated significantly, spending most days in bed, her vibrant personality flickering in and out like a candle in wind. But she smiled when Seraphine arrived, reaching for her daughter's hand with fingers that felt like bird bones. "You came back," her mother whispered. "Always," Seraphine promised. Jae-hyun called every day, navigating the time difference to catch her in the evenings. He told her about Seoul, about rebuilding relationships with Korean partners, about the challenges of modernizing a business that had operated in gray areas for decades. "I'm trying to do what my father couldn't," he said one night. "Make everything completely legitimate. It's harder than I thought. So many people are resistant to change." "Change is always hard," Seraphine said, "but you can do hard things. You survived your sister trying. To kill you, remember?" He laughed. "Fair point." She told him about her days caring for her mother, about reconnecting with her siblings, about the complicated emotions of being home. Some days were beautiful, full of family meals and shared stories. Other days were exhausting, watching her mother suffer and knowing there was nothing anyone could do. "I wish I could be there with you," Jae-hyun said. "You are," Seraphine assured him. "Just hearing your voice helps." In late February, her mother called the family together. They gathered in the small living room, all of them knowing what was coming but not wanting to face it. "I'm tired," her mother said simply. "The pain is too much, and the doctors say there's nothing more they can do. I'm ready to rest." Nabiria sobbed. Their father held their mother's hand with trembling fingers. Seraphine felt her heart breaking into pieces. "But before I go," her mother continued, looking at Seraphine, "I need you to promise me something. Stop living half a life. You found love, real love. Don't let fear or distance or anything else steal that from you. Chase it, baby girl. Fight for it." "Mama, I can't think about that right now." "Yes, you can," her mother insisted. "Life doesn't stop because death comes. You have to keep living, keep loving. Promise me." "I promise," Seraphine whispered. Her mother died 3 days later, peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by family. The funeral was beautiful and heartbreaking, a celebration of a life well lived but ended too soon. Jae-hyun called within hours of hearing the news. "I'm booking a flight," he said immediately. I'll be there tomorrow." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "You were there for me when I had no one. Let me be there for you." He arrived the next day, exhausted from the long flight, but solid and steady. He held her while she cried, sat with her family during the mourning period, helped with arrangements without being asked. Her father, watching them together, pulled Seraphine aside. "This is a good man," he said in Luganda. "Don't let him go." "I won't, Papa," she promised. After the funeral, Jae-hyun stayed in Uganda for a week, extending his trip despite pressing business in Seoul. Seraphine was grateful beyond words, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of grief. They walked through Kampala together, Seraphine showing him the city she'd grown up visiting, the bustling markets, the boda chaos, the mix of modern buildings and traditional shops. He bought fabrics from her favorite vendor and sampled street food without hesitation, earning approving nods from locals who appreciated his openness. "It's beautiful here," he said as they watched the sunset over Lake Victoria. "I understand why part of you will always belong to this place." "And part of me belongs in America now," Seraphine said. "That's the hard part about having two homes. You're always missing one of them." Or you could look at it as being fortunate enough to belong to two worlds, Jae-hyun suggested gently. She leaned into his shoulder. "When did you become such an optimist?" "Since I woke up from a coma and found someone worth living for," he said simply. The night before he had to fly back to Seoul, they sat on her family's porch, listening to crickets and distant music from a neighbor's radio. "Come to Korea," Jae-hyun said suddenly. "Not forever, just for a visit. I want to show you where I came from, introduce you to the parts of my heritage I've been trying to honor. And honestly, I just really want to see you again sooner than months from now." "I don't know if I can afford—" "I'll buy the ticket," he interrupted. "Before you argue, consider it a late birthday present. When is your birthday anyway?" "March 15th, she admitted. "Perfect. That's 3 weeks away. Come to Seoul for your birthday. Stay as long as you want. I have plenty of space and—" He paused, looking uncertain for the first time. "I miss you, Seraphine. These weeks apart have made me realize how much I want you in my life, not just for special occasions or phone calls, but every day." Her heart raced. "That's a big thing you're saying." "I know," he said quietly. "And if it's too much, too fast, tell me. But I've learned that life is short and unpredictable. When you find something real, you don't waste time being cautious." Seraphine thought about her mother's words, about fighting for love, about not living half a life. "Okay," she said, "I'll come to Seoul." His smile was brilliant in the darkness. Seoul was overwhelming in the best way possible. The neon lights, the crowded streets, the mix of ancient temples and ultra-modern skyscrapers. It was like nothing Seraphine had ever experienced. Jae-hyun's apartment in Gangnam was sleek and minimalist, all clean lines and expensive furniture. But he'd filled the guest room with flowers and Ugandan coffee, making her feel instantly welcome. "This is incredible," she breathed, looking out at the city lights. "I'm glad you like it," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, "because I was hoping you might consider staying longer than a visit." She turned in his arms. "What do you mean?" "The business restructuring is going well," Jae-hyun explained, "but it's going to take at least another 6 months, maybe a year. I've been thinking. Why go back to Richmond right away? Why not stay here, see if you like it? You could find work if you want, or take time to figure out what you really want to do. No pressure, no expectations, just be here with me." It was terrifying and thrilling at the same time, leaving everything she'd built in America, stepping into this completely foreign world. "What about my apartment? My life in Richmond?" "Keep the apartment if you want," he said. "This doesn't have to be permanent, just a trial run. But Seraphine, I meant what I said. I want to build a life with you, and right now my life is here. I'm not asking you to give up everything, just to be willing to explore what we could be together." She kissed him, soft and certain. "Yes, I'll stay." The next few months were like a dream. Jae-hyun taught her Korean, laughing at her pronunciation but praising her determination. She found work at an international NGO, using her English skills to help coordinate projects between Korean organizations and African partners. The job was fulfilling in ways cleaning houses had never been. They explored Seoul together, eating at Pojangmacha street stalls and high-end restaurants, visiting palaces and museums, hiking in the mountains outside the city. Jae-hyun introduced her to his cousins, who welcomed her warmly despite their initial surprise. "We never thought Jae-hyun would settle down," his cousin Mi-sun told her over coffee. "He was always so focused on business, so serious. But you make him laugh. We like that." Not everything was easy. The language barrier was frustrating sometimes, and Korean work culture was different from what she was used to. There were moments when Seraphine felt desperately homesick, missing Uganda and America in equal measure. But Jae-hyun was patient and understanding, giving her space when she needed it and support when she asked. "You don't have to love everything about Seoul," he told her one night when she was particularly frustrated. "You're allowed to miss home, to find parts of this difficult. That doesn't mean you're failing or that this isn't working." "Sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself," Seraphine admitted, "like I'm becoming someone different to fit into your world." "Then don't fit," Jae-hyun said simply. "Be exactly who you are. My world needs to make room for you, not the other way around." It was exactly what she needed to hear. In July, Jae-hyun got unexpected news. The restructuring was complete, the business fully legitimate and thriving. He could go back to Richmond if he wanted, or stay in Seoul, or split his time. Between both. The choice was his. "What do you want to do?" Seraphine asked. They were at a Hanok guest house in Jeonju, taking a weekend trip to explore traditional Korean culture. Sitting in the courtyard under paper lanterns, eating bibimbap, it felt like time had slowed down. "I want to ask you something first," Jae-hyun said nervously, "and you can say no, there's no pressure, but—" He pulled out a small box, and Seraphine's breath caught. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly. "Not yet, not until you're ready, but I wanted you to have this." Inside the box was a delicate ring, silver with a small green stone. "It's Ugandan emerald," Jae-hyun explained. "I had it made special. It represents your home, your roots. And I wanted you to know that wherever we end up, Richmond or Seoul or anywhere else, we carry our homes with us. You don't have to choose between worlds, Seraphine. We can build a life that honors both." Tears streamed down her face as he slipped the ring on her right hand. "It's beautiful." "You're beautiful," he said softly, "and brave and strong and everything I never knew I needed. So here's what I'm thinking. We split our time. 6 months in Seoul, 6 months in Richmond. Build the business in both places. Create a life that's truly ours, not limited by geography or expectations." "That sounds perfect," Seraphine whispered. He cupped her face gently. "Is that a yes to the plan or a yes to eventually saying yes to the actual proposal?" She laughed through her tears. "Both, probably. Definitely both." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands, reverent and tender. "I love you, Seraphine Nasarumbi. Thank you for finding that letter. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for being brave enough to love me back." "I love you too," she said. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for making me believe in fairy tales again." They spent another 6 months in Seoul before returning to Richmond that winter. The transition was smoother than expected. Both of them settled into their new rhythm of split continents and shared dreams. In Richmond, Seraphine reconnected with friends and found work with an international development organization. Jae-hyun focused on the American side of his business, now completely clean and growing steadily. They bought a house together in Richmond's museum district, filling it with Korean art and Ugandan textiles, creating a space that reflected both their worlds. Victoria wrote from prison occasionally, short letters, careful and remorseful. Jae-hyun read them but rarely responded, still working through layers of betrayal and hurt. "I think I'm getting there," he told Seraphine one evening. Not to forgiveness exactly, but to understanding that she's human and flawed and made terrible choices. Maybe someday I'll be able to visit her, to have a real conversation. but I'm not there yet. And that's okay, Seraphine assured him. Healing isn't linear. In March, on Seraphine's 33rd birthday, Jae-hyun took her to Maymont Park, their spot where so much had unfolded. They walked the familiar paths, remembering that first meeting, those nervous planning sessions, the moment everything changed. Near the Italian gardens, he stopped and turned to her. "A year ago, you agreed to stay in Seoul with me," he said, "to build something together across continents and cultures, and it's been the best year of my life." He knelt down, pulling out a different box this time. "Seraphine Nasarambi, you found me when I was lost. You believed in me when no one else did. You showed me what love looks like when it's real and brave and completely unexpected. Will you marry me?" The ring was stunning, a blend of Korean and Ugandan design, sapphires and emeralds intertwined. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." He stood and kissed her properly, deep and sweet and full of promise. Around them, spring was blooming, cherry blossoms falling like snow. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony that bridged their worlds. Half in Richmond, half in Seoul, with family and friends flying in from Uganda and Korea and everywhere in between. Seraphine wore a traditional hanbok for the Korean ceremony and a Ugandan gomesi for the American reception. Nabiria was her maid of honor, and Jae-hyun's cousin Mi-soon stood beside her. Even Seraphine's father made the journey, walking her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered. "I know, Papa," Seraphine said. "I feel her here with us." The reception was a wild mix of cultures, Korean drumming and Ugandan dancing, kimchi and matoki, speeches in 3 languages that made everyone laugh and cry. Detective Park came, bringing news that the last of Victoria's associates had been prosecuted. The case was finally completely closed. As Seraphine and Jae-hyun danced their first dance, he pulled her close. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one," she promised. "You?" "Only that I didn't wake up sooner," he said with a smile. "Think of all the time we could have had." "We have now," Seraphine said, "and hopefully a whole lot of forever ahead of us." "Forever sounds perfect," Jae-hyun agreed, and as they swayed together, surrounded by everyone they loved, Seraphine thought about everything that had led to this moment. A hidden letter, a miracle awakening, a trust built between strangers who became everything to each other. Sometimes the best love stories started in the most unexpected places. Sometimes you just had to be brave enough to find the letter under the pillow and read it out loud. Sometimes that was all it took to change everything. If you enjoyed this story of Seraphine and Jae-hyun finding love in the most unexpected circumstances, hit that like button and subscribe for more heartwarming romance tales. Drop a comment telling us what part made you smile the most, and don't forget to share this with someone who believes in second chances and unexpected love.